I felt the first contraction at 3 a.m., but when I woke him up, he just looked at me with those cold, empty eyes and locked the bedroom door from the outside. 7 hours later, I was on the floor of his walk-in closet, biting down on one of his belts to keep from screaming as I brought my daughter into this world alone, with nothing but a flashlight and an old towel, while he sat in the living room watching football like nothing was happening. The neighbors later told me they heard something that day, but they thought it was just another one of our fights. They had no idea I was fighting for both our lives. I'm sharing my story now from a place of peace, though the memories still haunt me. My daughter is 14 now, safe and thriving. She knows some of what happened, but not everything, not yet. What kind of man watches his wife suffer through childbirth, alone, and refuses to call for help? Subscribe to our channel to hear my full story of survival and how I finally escaped with my baby girl. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and if you're a mother, stay strong. Leave a like. Subscribe. I met David at a friend's barbecue in the summer of 2008. I was 24, fresh out of college with an art degree and working at a local gallery. He was 32. Confident in a way that made everyone lean in when he spoke, with a smile that seemed to be just for me. "You're different from the other women here," he said when we first spoke. I believed him. I thought it was romantic. Now, I know it was the first test to see if I craved being special, being chosen. Our first date was perfect dinner at a restaurant where he knew the owner, who gave us the best table. 3 months later, he surprised me with a weekend trip to the mountains, where he proposed under the stars. My friends said it was too fast. My sister asked if I was sure. "He's the most thoughtful man I've ever met," I told them. "You just don't know him like I do." What I didn't tell them was how he'd started checking my phone, just casually at first. How he'd question me about male names in my contacts. How he'd show up unexpectedly at the gallery just to surprise me. After the engagement, he suggested I move into his house. It made financial sense, he said. Within weeks, he proposed I quit my dead-end gallery job to focus on our wedding planning and my own art. "I make more than enough for both of us," he insisted. "I want to take care of you." The red flags were there, waving violently in the wind, but I was colorblind to them. When he installed a location tracker on my phone for safety, I thanked him for caring. When he suggested we combine our bank accounts and gave me an allowance, I thought it was practical. The wedding was small, his preference. My college friends weren't invited because he thought they were immature. My sister was my only bridesmaid. My father, who had questions about David, died 2 months before the ceremony from a sudden heart attack. At the funeral, David whispered, "At least he won't be able to interfere with our lives now." I should have run then, but I mistook control for stability, obsession for love. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the darkness, there were moments of light, moments I clung to later, wondering if I had imagined the good in him, or if it had simply burned away, leaving only the monster behind. What I didn't know then was that some men don't change, they just slowly reveal who they've been all along. The first months of marriage felt like floating in a dream. David renovated the spare bedroom into an art studio for me, with perfect northern light and built-in storage for my supplies. He brought me coffee every morning and asked to see what I was working on. He seemed proud of me, of us. "You're blooming under my care," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "I knew you just needed the right environment." 3 months after our wedding, David came home excited. He'd been offered a promotion at his architectural firm, a big one. The catch: we'd need to move 4 hours away, to a small town I'd never even visited. "It's perfect timing," he said. "A fresh start, just the two of us." I hesitated. My sister had just had her first baby. The gallery had started selling some of my pieces. "I had roots here. Don't you want me to succeed?" he asked, his voice taking on that edge I was learning to fear. "After everything I've done for you." We moved 6 weeks later. The house was beautifully restored, Victorian, on 3 acres of land, far from any neighbors. Too far, I would later realize. "You can make the entire 3rd floor your studio," he said. "No distractions, no witnesses either." The isolation happened so gradually I barely noticed. First, my calls with my sister became less frequent. Reception was spotty in our new house, and David suggested I switch to his phone carrier, but somehow that never happened. Then my art supplies started running low, and since we only had one car that David needed for his commute, I had to wait for weekends to restock. "I'll pick things up for you," he'd offer, but he'd often forget or buy the wrong items. I tried making friends in town, but David found flaws in everyone I met. The woman from the library book club was clearly an alcoholic. The friendly cashier at the grocery store was flirting with every man she sees. By our 1-year anniversary, my world had shrunk to the walls of our house. David controlled the finances completely. I didn't even have my own debit card anymore. It's just easier if I handle everything, he explained. You're not good with money, sweetheart. I started to believe him. Maybe I wasn't good with money. Maybe those people in town weren't good for me. Maybe this isolation was normal. The first time he threw something a plate against the wall, just missing my head, was after I mentioned visiting my sister for her son's first birthday. You're my family now, he shouted. When will that be enough for you? He apologized profusely afterward, blaming work stress, bringing me flowers for days. I accepted his apology and canceled my travel plans. That night, as he held me too tightly, in bed, he whispered, "You know I couldn't live without you, right? I'd rather die than lose you." It sounded like love at the time. Later, I understood it was a threat. The morning it happened, I'd been sick for the 3rd day in a row. David had left for work annoyed, saying I was always finding some excuse to avoid my responsibilities. I hadn't even been sure what responsibilities he meant. I kept the house spotless, cooked every meal, and still tried to paint when I had energy. I found the pregnancy test hidden in the back of the bathroom cabinet, an old one, from when we'd had a scare the year before. It was probably expired, but I took it anyway, more to rule out the possibility than confirm it. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately. When David came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the test in front of me. He saw it before I could speak. "Is this for real?" he asked, his face unreadable. I nodded, still trying to process it myself. His reaction stunned me. He swept me up in his arms, spinning me around the kitchen, tears in his eyes. "This is what we needed," he said. "This changes everything." That night, he drew me a bath, brought me tea, treated me like precious cargo. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe a baby would soften him. Maybe parenthood would heal whatever was broken in our marriage. 3 days later, I was on the phone with my sister when he came home early. I didn't hear him enter. The first I knew of his presence was when he yanked the phone from my hand and threw it against the wall. "Who were you talking to?" he demanded, his face inches from mine. "Just Sarah," I stammered. I was telling her about the baby. Something in his eyes hardened. "You told her without discussing it with me first. This is our news, not yours to spread around." "She's my sister," I said, my voice small. What happened next is still a blur. He didn't hit me. He never hit me in the face, never left marks where people could see. Instead, he grabbed my wrists so hard I felt the bones grind together, backed me against the wall, and spoke in a voice so quiet it terrified me more than any shout. "If you ever try to turn your family against me, I will make sure you never see them again. This baby is ours, our family. No one else matters now." I slid down the wall after he left the room, cradling my wrists, watching bruises form like ink, spilling under my skin. Later that night, he crawled into bed beside me, pulled me against him, and whispered apologies into my hair. "I'm just scared," he said. "Scared you'll leave me. Scared I won't be a good father. You know I love you more than anything, don't you?" I said yes. What else could I say? The next morning, he brought me breakfast in bed. He'd gone out early to buy prenatal vitamins, books on pregnancy, even a tiny stuffed animal for the baby. His eyes were clear, his smile genuine. It was as if last night had never happened. That's when I realized how dangerous my situation truly was. Not because he'd hurt me though, that was terrifying enough, but because in his mind, love and control were the same thing. Violence and protection, indistinguishable. And now, I was carrying his child. Pregnancy became David's new obsession. He tracked every symptom, downloaded apps that told him how big our baby was each week, and took over scheduling my doctor appointments. At first, I found his enthusiasm endearing. This was the man I'd fallen in love with, attentive and caring. But, as the weeks passed, his attentiveness morphed into surveillance. "You shouldn't eat that," he'd say, taking a cookie from my hand. "Too much sugar is bad for the baby." He insisted on attending every doctor's appointment, answering questions before I could, his hand tight on my knee. "We're hoping for a boy," he told my obstetrician during our 12-week visit, though we'd never discussed it. When the doctor asked if I had any concerns, David squeezed my hand. She's been emotional lately, he said, laughing. Hormones, right. Later, in the car, I gathered my courage. I'd be happy with a girl too, you know. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Boys carry on the family name. My father had a son. His father had a son. That's just how it is in my family. As my body changed, David's control tightened. He insisted I drink a protein shake every morning that he prepared for the baby's development. He measured my portions. At dinner, he replaced my prenatal vitamins with ones he'd researched, pouring my original prescription down the toilet. Those drugstore brands are garbage, he said. Don't you want the best for our son? When I was 5 months along, my sister called to say she'd be in a town just an hour away for a work conference. Could we meet for lunch? David overheard. You're not driving an hour alone, he said after I hung up. The stress isn't good for the baby. You could drive me, I suggested. His eyes hardened. I have meetings. Besides, Sarah never liked me. She'd just fill your head with nonsense. The day my sister was in town, David called every hour to check on me. When I didn't answer once because I was napping, he came home early, panic on his face. I thought something happened to you, he said, shaking me awake. Don't ever do that again. That night, he installed a new security system for our protection. He said, what he didn't mention was that it sent alerts to his phone whenever a door or window opened. At 6 months, we had an ultrasound to determine the sex. I watched David's face as the technician pointed to the screen. Congratulations, she said. It's a healthy baby girl. The drive home was silent. When we arrived, David went straight to his study and closed the door. I heard glass breaking but knew better than to check on him. Later, he emerged with red eyes and a cold smile. Maybe the next one will be a boy, he said, placing a hand on my belly without looking at me. That's when I knew the baby I was carrying, my daughter, was already a disappointment to him. And I began to fear what that might mean for both of us. At 7 months pregnant, I found a phone book in a forgotten kitchen drawer. I ran my finger down the page until I found my sister's number, memorizing it while my heart pounded in my chest. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. My phone had accidentally fallen into the sink while David was washing dishes, and he hadn't replaced it yet. I waited until David left for work, then went to the landline in his office, the only phone in the house. I dialed, with shaking fingers. Sarah, it's me, Emma. Her voice cracked. Oh my God, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I need help, I whispered, one hand on my swollen belly. Something's wrong with David. I'm afraid of what might happen. When the sound of the garage door opening froze my blood. David was home hours early. No warning. I have to go, I said quickly. If you don't hear from me. The office door swung open. David stood there, his face a mask of calm that terrified me more than rage would have. Who are you talking to? He asked, his voice soft. I hung up without saying goodbye. Wrong number, I lied. He crossed the room slowly, took the phone from my hand, and yanked the cord from the wall. Don't lie to me, Emma. Never lie to me. He crouched in front of me, taking my face in his hands. Was it Sarah? What did you tell her? Nothing, I said. I just missed her. You have me. You have our baby. Why isn't that enough? His thumbs pressed into my cheeks, not quite hard enough to bruise. What were you going to tell her about me? The truth hovered on my lips, that I was afraid, that I needed to escape, that I'd made a terrible mistake, but self-preservation won out. I just wanted to ask about her son, I said, about what to expect with a newborn. His hands relaxed slightly. I bought you books for that. That night, after a silent dinner, David presented me with a list of house rules for my protection during the final months of pregnancy, he explained. No leaving the house alone. No phone calls without him present. No visitors. It's only temporary, he promised. Just until the baby comes. The next morning, I woke to find my car keys missing from their hook. Batteries dead, David said, not meeting my eyes. I'll take care of it next weekend. But the next day, his work toolbox was on the passenger seat of my car. When I glanced inside, I saw my distributor cap nestled among his wrenches. That afternoon, I heard him in the garage, drilling something. Later, I discovered new deadbolts on every exterior door keyed locks that required a key from both sides. Keys that only David carried. Just a precaution, he said, noticing my expression. There've been break-ins nearby. That night, I lay awake, beside him, feeling my daughter kick inside me. I realized with perfect clarity that we were prisoners, and unless I found a way out, she would be born into captivity. I needed a plan. But first, I needed to survive until her birth. So, I smiled when David touched me, agreed when he spoke, and began to hide small, useful things around the house: a screwdriver under the mattress, a spare phone charger behind a heating vent, cash from his wallet when he showered. And I waited. By 8 months, my world had shrunk to the dimensions of our house. The windows stayed closed despite the summer heat. Pollen's bad for the baby, David insisted. The mail came through a slot in the door, directly into David's hands. Groceries were delivered while I was instructed to rest upstairs. I spent my days in a fog of fear and preparation. I converted an old makeup bag into a birth kit: clean scissors, string, antiseptic wipes, pilfered from David's first aid supplies. I hid bottles of water and granola bars throughout the house. I memorized the route to the nearest hospital, though I had no way to get there. One Tuesday morning, a knock at the door startled me from my daze. Through the peephole, I saw a woman about my age holding a plate of cookies. "Hello," she called. "We just moved in down the street. I'm bringing treats to the neighbors." I glanced at the clock. David wouldn't be home for hours. I unlocked the 3 deadbolts with trembling fingers. "Hi," I said, trying to remember how normal people spoke. "I'm Emma." Her eyes widened at my belly. "Oh my goodness, when are you due?" 3 weeks, I said, though the doctor had said it could be sooner. "Do you have everything you need? Car seat installed, hospital bag packed?" She smiled, handing me the cookies. The question struck me like physical blows. I had nothing ready. No car seat, no hospital, no plan beyond survival. "My husband's handling all that," I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. She tilted her head, studying me. "Are you okay? You look a little pale." For one wild moment, I considered telling her everything, begging her to help me escape. But then I saw David's car turning onto our street home for lunch without warning, as he sometimes did, to check on me. "I have to go," I said, shoving the cookies back at her. "Please don't mention you saw me." I closed the door in her confused face and frantically relocked the deadbolts, making it to the couch just as David's key turned in the lock. "Who was at the door?" he asked immediately. "Nobody," I said. "Just heard a noise and checked." His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. That night, he installed a doorbell camera that sent alerts to his phone. As my due date approached, David grew more attentive and more controlling. He worked from home 3 days a week to be nearby when it happens. He brought home neutral colors, nothing pink. He assembled a crib in our bedroom, though I noticed he never bought a car seat. "Have you thought about the hospital?" I asked carefully over dinner. "Which one we'll go to?" He set down his fork. "Actually, I've been researching home births. It's more natural, better for bonding. But what about complications? What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," he said with such conviction I almost believed him. "Women have been giving birth at home for thousands of years. With midwives," I pointed out, "trained professionals. I've been studying." He gestured to a stack of books in his office. "Besides, hospitals are full of germs and interfering nurses. Our baby should be born here, in our home, just us." I nodded and changed the subject. But that night, I added more supplies to my hidden birth kit, including a sharp pair of fabric scissors that could serve as a weapon if needed. The following week, David installed a baby monitor in our bedroom, a camera with audio that connected to his phone. "So I can check on you both when I'm at work," he explained. What he meant was, "so I can watch you at all times." I was running out of time. The contractions started at 3 a.m. on a Sunday. Gentle at first, tightening waves that woke me from restless sleep. I lay still, counting the minutes between them, watching David's sleeping form beside me. 7 minutes apart, too soon to panic, but definitely labor. By 4 a.m., I couldn't stay silent through them anymore. I shook David's shoulder. "I think it's starting," I whispered. He rolled over, immediately alert. His hand went to my belly, feeling it hardened with the contraction. "How far apart?" "About 6 minutes now." He nodded, but instead of getting up, he just watched me, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "Shouldn't we get ready to go?" I asked, trying to keep the fear from my voice. We'd had this conversation a dozen times, always ending with his vague assurances that he'd handle it when the time came. "Go where?" he asked, as if genuinely confused. "To the hospital," I said. "David, please, I need medical care." He sat up then, switching on the bedside lamp. "We've discussed this. You're having the baby here, where it's safe, where I can control the environment." Another contraction gripped me, stronger this time. I grabbed his arm, digging my nails in. This isn't about control, I gasped when it passed. This is about our daughter's safety, my safety. Something changed in his eyes, then a coldness spreading like ice across a pond. You don't trust me, he said flatly. After everything I've done for you. That's not it, I pleaded. I'm scared. First babies often have complications. Please, David. He stood abruptly, went to the dresser, and pulled out a small orange bottle, my prenatal vitamins, or what he claimed were vitamins. Take 2 of these, he ordered. They'll help with the pain. I shook my head. What are they really? His smile was terrifying in its gentleness. Just something to help you relax. Trust me, Emma. I pretended to put them in my mouth, hiding them under my tongue until he turned to get water. I slipped them under the mattress while he wasn't looking. I need to use the bathroom, I said after swallowing the water. I'll help you, he insisted, gripping my arm too tightly as I stood in the bathroom. He waited outside the door, left slightly ajar so he could hear me. I ran the water to mask any sounds and quickly checked my hidden birth kit, tucked behind the bathroom trash can. Everything was still there. When I emerged, another contraction hit strong enough to double me over. David caught me, his strong arms suddenly gentle. Breathe through it, he whispered. I've got you. For a moment, I saw the man I'd thought. I'm married, caring, protective. But as the contraction eased, his next words froze my blood. Let's get you comfortable, he said, leading me back to bed. I have a conference call at 9 that I can't miss, but I'll check on you between meetings. What? I stared at him in disbelief. You're still going to work? I'm in labor. First babies take forever, he said dismissively. You'll probably still be in early labor tonight. I'll work from home, but I need to make these calls. As if to punctuate his indifference, he went to the bedroom door, stepped outside, and I heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in a lock. He had locked me in. David, I called, rushing to the door as fast as my contracting body would allow. What are you doing? Keeping you safe. His voice came through the door. Get some rest. I'll bring you breakfast after my first call. I sank to the floor, another contraction building as his footsteps retreated down the hall. I was alone. I was in labor. And I was locked in. The morning crawled by in waves of increasing pain. David brought breakfast, toast and tea at 8, checking my forehead for fever, with cold fingers. He seemed disappointed that the mysterious pills hadn't knocked me out. How are the contractions? He asked, watching me breathe through one. Closer, I managed. 4 minutes maybe. He nodded, consulting one of his books. Still early labor. First babies take a long time. David, I whispered, reaching for his hand. Please don't leave me alone. I'm scared. Something flickered in his eyes, doubt perhaps. For a moment, I thought I'd reached him. Then his phone buzzed. That's my 9 o'clock. Try to rest. I'll check on you after. The key turned in the lock again. I was alone by 10. The contractions were 3 minutes apart and strong enough that I couldn't speak through them. I tried the door handle repeatedly, knowing it was futile. I pounded on the door during a particularly vicious contraction, but David had his office at the other end of the house. He couldn't hear me or was ignoring me. I searched the room desperately for something to use on the lock. A hairpin, a letter opener, anything, but David had been thorough in removing potential tools. At 11, I felt a warm gush between my legs, my water breaking. The contractions intensified immediately, coming every 2 minutes, lasting a minute each. Active labor. Soon I would need to push. I dragged myself to the bathroom, pulling my hidden birth kit from behind the trash can. I ran the tub with warm water, leaving the door open to hear if David returned. I stripped off my soaked pajamas and eased into the water, trying to remember the breathing techniques I'd read about in secret. By noon, I was making involuntary sounds with each contraction, low moans I muffled with a washcloth. I knew I should get out of the tub, find a better position for pushing, but the water provided the only comfort I had. At 1, I heard David's footsteps in the bedroom. Emma. His voice held confusion when he saw the empty bed. In here, I called weakly from the bathroom. He appeared in the doorway, his face registering shock at the sight of me in the tub, clearly in advanced labor. Why didn't you call me? He demanded, as if I had any way to do so. I tried, I gasped, another contraction building. I knocked and shouted. He frowned, looking genuinely confused. Had he convinced himself I hadn't? Or was this another manipulation? We need to get you out of there, he said, reaching for my arm. The bed will be better. No, I said, pulling away. Water helps with the pain. His jaw tightened. The books say. I don't care what the books say. I screamed as the contraction peaked. I'm the one doing this. Something dark passed over his face. When the contraction eased, he straightened up. I have another call, he said coldly. We'll do this your way after I'm done. David, no, I pleaded. It's coming soon. I need to push. No, you don't, he said with maddening certainty. First babies take hours to push out. You're not ready yet. He left. And once again, I heard the key turn. The next contraction brought an overwhelming urge to push. I fought it, knowing I couldn't deliver safely in the tub. I dragged myself out, dripping water everywhere, and crawled to the bedroom, pulling a towel with me. The carpeted floor seemed wrong, too exposed. I looked around wildly, seeking some sheltered corner. My eyes fell on the walk-in closet, dark, private mine. I crawled toward it, gathering the towel, my birth kit, and a flashlight from the nightstand. I made it inside just as another contraction hit, this one accompanied by a deep, primal pressure. I arranged the towel beneath me, propped myself against the wall, and turned on the flashlight, balancing it on a shoe rack to illuminate my makeshift delivery room. In the sudden quiet between contractions, I heard the muffled sound of the television. Downstairs, a football game. David was watching sports while I prepared to give birth alone in his closet. I bit down on his leather belt to muffle my scream as the next contraction came, and I gave in to the overwhelming urge to push. Time blurred. In the darkness of the closet, I existed in a primal space between worlds, no longer just myself, not yet a mother. Each contraction built upon the last, my body working with ancient wisdom my mind couldn't comprehend. I bit down on the belt with each push, tasting leather and salt, determined not to make sounds that would bring David. I wanted these moments, as they worked, to belong only to my daughter and me. Between contractions, I prepared what I could with shaking hands. I tore open antiseptic wipes, arranged clean clothing within reach, positioned the flashlight to see what I needed to see. The pressure became unbearable. I reached down and felt her head crowning a burning ring of fire that tore a muffled scream from my throat despite the belt between my teeth. Stop, I whispered to myself. Slow down. I panted through the next contraction, fighting the urge to push, giving my body time to stretch. The books I'd secretly read in David's study had emphasized this: go slowly to prevent tearing. With the next contraction, I bore down again, feeling her head emerge fully, in a slippery rush. I guided her with trembling fingers, supporting her skull in my palm, feeling for the cord around her neck. It was clear. One more, I promised myself. Just one more. The final contraction built like a tidal wave. I pushed with everything I had left, feeling her shoulders rotate and slip free, followed by the surprising speed of her body. She slid into my waiting hands at 2:43 p.m., teeny, slippery, and silent. Panic seized me. Why wasn't she crying? I wiped her face with a clean section of towel, gently cleared her mouth and nose as I'd read to do. Please, I begged. Please breathe. She gave a small cough, then a thin, mewling cry that grew stronger with each second. I pulled her to my chest, skin to skin, covering us both with the dry part of the towel to keep her warm. Hello, I whispered, counting her fingers and toes by flashlight, inspecting her perfect face. I'm your mom. She had dark hair, matted to her head, and eyes that squinted against even the dim light. She was small, smaller than I'd expected, but her cry was strong, her grip fierce around my finger. I waited for the placenta, delivered it into a plastic shopping bag I'd hidden in my kit, then used the fabric scissors to cut the cord after. It stopped pulsing, tying it off with clean string, as the books had instructed. In the dim closet, with the muffled sounds of the football game still audible downstairs, I held my daughter against my heart and made her a silent promise. We would not live like this. She would not grow up in fear. We would find a way out. I cleaned her as best I could with baby wipes, wrapped her in a soft t-shirt, and tried to clean myself, disposing of the evidence of birth in the plastic bag, tucking it deep in the closet corner to remove later. I was shaking from exhaustion and blood loss, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. The fog of pregnancy had lifted, burned away by the fierce clarity of motherhood. I needed to feed her, to rest, to heal. But more than anything, I needed to keep her existence a secret from David for as long as possible. Every minute she remained mine alone was a minute he couldn't begin to exert his control over her. I listened at the closet door. The game was still on. I wrapped my daughter tighter against me, settling back against the wall to nurse her for the first time. "We did it," I whispered against her downy head. "And I'm going to get us out of here. I promise." I don't know how long we stayed in the closet, my daughter nursing, me drifting in and out of consciousness, the flashlight batteries dimmed, casting shadows across her perfect face. I named her Lily in those secret hours, a name I'd never discussed with David, a first decision that was mine alone. The sound of footsteps on the stairs jolted me awake. Lily was asleep against my chest, her tiny breaths warm on my skin. I shifted her to one arm, used the other to pull myself up to a sitting position, and steeled myself for what was coming. The bedroom door opened. "Emma." David's voice held no concern, just irritation. "Are you still in the bathroom?" "My game's over." I didn't answer. Let him find us. Let him see what his neglect had wrought. The closet door swung open, light blinding after hours in darkness. David stood silhouetted against it, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he registered the scene before him, me on the floor, bloodied towels around me, a tiny bundle against my chest. "What have you done?" he whispered. I laughed, a hoarse, broken sound. "What I had to." He crouched down, reaching for the bundle. I turned away, protective. "Let me see," he demanded. "Her name is Lily," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "She's healthy, we both are. No thanks to you." His face hardened at my defiance, but his eyes remained fixed on the baby. He reached again, and this time I let him pull back the fabric to see her face. Something shifted in his expression, not the disappointment I'd feared at her gender, but something worse, possession. "My daughter," he said softly. "She's perfect." He lifted her from my arms before I could stop him, cradling her with surprising gentleness. Lily squirmed, her face scrunching in protest at being separated from me. "Give her back," I said. "She needs to nurse." He ignored me, walking out of the closet, into the bedroom, cooing to her. I tried to stand but collapsed, still too weak from blood loss. "David," I called, panic rising. "Please bring her back." He returned without her. "I put her in the crib," he said. "We need to clean you up. You're a mess." He helped me to the bathroom, surprisingly gentle, running a warm bath. As I sat on the toilet, waiting for the tub to fill, a wave of dizziness hit me. "I think something's wrong," I murmured. "I'm bleeding too much." He frowned, looking at the trail of blood I'd left. "It's normal after birth." "No," I insisted. "This is too much. I need a doctor." "You're fine," he said dismissively. "Women have been giving birth at home for millennia." But I wasn't fine. Over the next 2 days, I developed a fever, chills, and cramping. The bleeding continued, heavier than it should have been. David brought me ibuprofen, and insisting it was just normal recovery. He took over caring for Lily, bringing her to me only for feedings, hovering to ensure I didn't hold her too long afterward. He changed her, bathed her, and spent hours just staring at her in the crib. He'd moved to his office. "She doesn't need a birth certificate," he told me when I asked if we should register her birth. "Not yet. Let's just enjoy this time as a family." By the third day, I could barely stay conscious during feedings. The sheets were soaked with sweat from my fever. I knew I had an infection, probably endometritis from the unsterile birth, and without antibiotics, it could be fatal. "Please," I begged, when David brought Lily for her morning feeding, "call an ambulance. If not for me, then for her. She needs her mother." For the first time, fear flickered across his face as he took in my gray complexion, my shaking hands. He touched my forehead, flinching at the heat. "I'll go get some medicine," he said finally. "Real medicine, from the pharmacy." He took Lily with him when he left a hostage to ensure I wouldn't try to call for help in his absence, but he'd underestimated the power of maternal desperation. The moment David's car pulled out of the driveway, I dragged myself from the bed. The house swayed around me as I staggered to his office, searching desperately for a phone, a computer, anything to call for help. But David had taken his laptop, and the landline remained disconnected. I collapsed in his desk chair, my strength failing. That's when I noticed the window was cracked open just an inch, to let in the spring breeze for Lily while they were in the room. An oversight, a mistake, the first David had made. I forced myself to stand, inching toward the window. Our house sat far back from the road, but if someone drove by, if I could just get their attention. The doorbell rang. I froze, certain I'd hallucinated the sound. It rang again, followed by a knock. Using the wall for support, I made my way downstairs, each step sending waves of pain through my infected body. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a crisp uniform, A name tag, a clipboard, a census taker. I opened the door with trembling hands, bracing myself against the frame to remain upright. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she began cheerfully. "I'm with the U.S. Census Bureau, conducting follow-up visits for households that didn't return there." She stopped abruptly, taking in my appearance. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Help me." I collapsed then, my legs finally giving out. The woman lunged forward, catching me before I hit the porch. "Oh my God," she gasped, lowering me gently to the floor. "You need an ambulance." "My baby," I managed. "He took my baby. Please. .. She was already pulling out her phone, dialing 911. "I need an ambulance," she told the dispatcher. A woman, maybe 30, extremely weak, possibly hemorrhaging. She looked at me. "What's your name, honey?" "Emma," I whispered. "My daughter is Lily, my husband, David. .. He'll be back soon. Please don't let him take her." The woman's eyes widened as she began to understand. She relayed the information to the dispatcher, her hand gripping mine tightly. "They're coming," she assured me. "Just hold on." Time blurred again. I remember the wail of sirens, the paramedics lifting me onto a stretcher, the census taker Janet. I later learned her name was riding with me, holding my hand the entire way. "Your baby," she kept saying. "Tell me about your baby so I can help find her." I described Lily between gasping breaths. 3 days old, dark hair, blue eyes, no birth certificate. Born in a closet while her father watched football. Janet's face hardened with each detail. By the time we reached the hospital, she was on her phone, calling the police. The next few hours passed in fragments. IV antibiotics dripping into my arm, a blood transfusion. Doctors asking questions I couldn't fully answer. Police officers at my bedside grim-faced as they took notes. "He'll hurt her," I kept saying. "He'll hurt her to punish me." They assured me they were searching for David and Lily, that an Amber Alert had been issued, that every officer in 3 counties was looking for them. But all I could think was that David was smart, methodical. He would have a plan for this exact scenario. The fever broke on my second day in the hospital. The infection retreated under the assault of powerful antibiotics. My mind cleared, though my body remained weak. Janet visited, bringing clothes, toiletries, and updates. The police had found David's car abandoned at a bus station. Security footage showed him boarding a bus to Chicago with an infant carrier, but the trail went cold there. "They'll find her," Janet promised, squeezing my hand. "The whole country is looking now." I nodded, but inside, I knew the truth. David had been planning this for months. The isolated house, the home birth, no birth certificate. He'd created a ghost child when he could disappear with. On my 3rd day in the hospital, a detective brought me a phone. "There's a call for you," he said, his expression carefully neutral. "We've traced it to a burner phone in Indiana." My heart stopped as I took the receiver. "Emma." David's voice, soft and familiar. "Are you there? Where's Lily?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I'd expected. "Safe," he said. "With me, where she belongs. Where you should be too, if you hadn't betrayed us." "Please," I whispered, as the detective signaled for me to keep him talking. "Let me see her. She needs her mother." "You gave up that right when you invited strangers into our home," he said coldly. "When you turned me into a fugitive, I was dying," I said. "You left me to die." Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, become the gentle, reasonable tone I'd once mistaken for love. "I can forgive you," he said. "We can be a family again. But you have to come alone. No police. Anything." I agreed immediately. "Just tell me where." As he gave me an address, my eyes met the detective's. We both knew I was lying, but for the first time since Lily's birth, I felt a glimmer of genuine hope. David had made another mistake. He'd called. The police set up the meeting at an Indiana truck stop, chosen by David for its isolation and easy escape routes. I was wired, briefed, and terrified not of David, but of what might happen to Lily in the chaos of an arrest. "We'll wait for a clear signal that the baby is safe," the lead detective assured me. "Your only job is to keep him calm and get eyes on your daughter." I nodded, my hands shaking as they fitted me with a bulletproof vest beneath my shirt. "What if he doesn't bring her?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. The detective's eyes met mine. "Then we follow him back to wherever he's keeping her. We don't move until we know where she is." The drive to Indiana took 3 hours. I sat in the back seat of an unmarked car, rehearsing what I would say. how I would act, submissive, repentant, anything to make David believe I'd chosen him over my own freedom. The truck stop appeared ahead, a brightly lit island in the darkness of rural highway. My stomach clenched as we pulled into the parking lot. "Remember," the detective said as I prepared to exit the car. "We're right here. You're not alone." But I felt desperately alone as I walked toward the entrance, scanning the lot for David's face. A hand grabbed my elbow from behind. "Keep walking," David's voice, low and tight. "Don't look around. They're watching." My heart hammered as I let him guide me past the main building, toward a rusted pickup truck at the far edge of the lot. "Where's Lily?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Safe," he said. "Not here." "Did you really think I'd bring her to the place I told the police about?" Ice flooded my veins. "I didn't tell the police anything." He laughed, a hollow sound I'd never heard from him before. "You're a terrible liar, Emma. Always have been." We reached the truck. He opened the passenger door, revealing an empty seat. "No car seat, no baby. Get in," he ordered. "We have a long drive." I hesitated, frantically trying to signal to the watching officers that Lily wasn't here. "She's at a motel," David continued, misreading my hesitation. "With a sitter. I needed to make sure you came alone." "I did," I lied. "I just want our family back together." His eyes softened slightly. "I knew you'd understand eventually. Get in, and I'll take you to her." I climbed into the truck, praying the police would understand what was happening. David walked around to the driver's side, scanning the parking lot before getting in. "Seatbelt," he said automatically as he started the engine. The normality of the request nearly broke me. This man, who had imprisoned me, forced me to give birth alone, and kidnapped our daughter, was concerned about seatbelt safety. We pulled out of the parking lot, turning not toward the highway but onto a dark service road behind the truck stop. "Where are we going?" I asked, fighting to keep panic from my voice. "Checking for tails," he said matter-of-factly. "Standard procedure." My blood ran cold at the practiced way he said it. This wasn't his first escape plan. We drove in silence for 10 minutes, taking random turns down progressively smaller roads. No police cars appeared behind us. David visibly relaxed. "They're not as smart as they think they are," he said, almost cheerfully. "Now we can go get our little girl." He turned onto a main road, heading toward a highway on-ramp. My mind raced. Once on the highway, the police might lose us completely. "How is she?" I asked, desperate to keep him talking, to buy time. "Is she eating enough?" His face softened at the mention of Lily. "She's perfect. Barely cries. Already recognizes my voice." The pride in his voice made me physically ill. 7 days. He'd had my daughter for 7 days. "I've missed her so much," I whispered. And this, at least, wasn't a lie. "She's missed you too," he said. "Though the formula seems to agree with her. Better than breastfeeding did." Each casual comment about my baby felt like a knife twist. As we approached the highway entrance, I knew I was running out of time. "I need to use the restroom," I blurted. "Please, David. It's been a long drive." He frowned, checking the rearview mirror. "We're almost there." "Please," I repeated, adding a hint of desperation to my voice. "I'm still recovering. The doctor said I shouldn't hold it." He sighed but took the next exit, pulling into a gas station, with flickering fluorescent lights and a single drowsy attendant visible through the window. 5 minutes, he said. "I'll be watching the door." I nodded, hurrying inside. The bathroom was around the back out of David's sightline. My hands trembled as I pulled out the phone the detective had given me. "He doesn't have Lily with him," I whispered when they answered. "Says she's at a motel with a sitter." "We're at a gas station off Highway 70, the Sunoco near exit 41. He's watching the front door." "Stay in the bathroom," the detective ordered. "We're 3 minutes out." But as I ended the call, the bathroom door crashed open. David stood there, his face contorted with rage, a phone, my hidden police phone, clutched in his hand. "I heard it ring in your pocket when I called it," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Did you think I wouldn't check?" Before I could respond, he grabbed my arm, dragging me out the back door toward the truck. "You'll never see her again," he hissed. "Never." As he shoved me into the passenger seat, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. David swore, jumping into the driver's seat and peeling out of the parking lot. The chase lasted less than a mile. Police cruisers surrounded us, forcing the truck onto the shoulder. David was handcuffed and placed in a squad car as I watched, numb. "Where is she?" I begged as they led him away. "Please, Just tell me where Lily is." He looked at me with empty eyes. "You'll never find her," he said. I made sure of that. 24 hours after David's arrest, Lily was still missing. I sat in a hotel room surrounded by FBI agents, detectives, and victim advocates, watching. As they built a profile of my husband, a man I realized I'd never really known. His real name wasn't David Chen, it was Daniel Collier, and he had a history of controlling relationships stretching back to college. 2 restraining orders, 1 dropped domestic violence charge. He'd been building and abandoning identities for years. "He's not talking," the lead FBI agent told me gently, "but we're following every lead." The motel clerk in Hammond remembers a man matching his description, checking in with an infant 3 days ago. "But they're gone now," I said flatly. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "We found formula, diapers, and baby clothes in the room. They were there, but they moved on." "Who has my baby?" I whispered. The question that had become my heartbeat, the only thought in my head. "We believe it's his mother," she replied. "Elaine Collier. They're very close, and she dropped off the grid the same day you went to the hospital." His mother, the woman he'd told me was dead. Another lie. 2 more days passed in a haze of statements, interviews, and dead-end leads. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My milk came in painfully, with no baby to feed. Every cry I heard in the hotel hallway, on the street below my window, jolted me awake with desperate hope. On the 4th day, a detective brought me a tablet with a video call waiting. "He's asking to speak to you," she explained. "From jail. You don't have to do this, but it might help us find Lily." I took the tablet with shaking hands. David Daniel appeared on the screen, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, his face haggard but his eyes still coldly calculating. "Hello, Emma," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "Where is she?" I demanded. He smiled slightly. "Safe, loved, with someone who will raise her right. She belongs with her mother." "Does she?" "The mother who betrayed her father, who chose strangers over family." I leaned closer to the screen. "I chose her life over your control." "Where is she, David?" "You'll never find her," he said calmly. "My mother has taken her somewhere. You'll never look. She's got a new name, new papers. By the time you track them down, if you ever do, she won't even remember you." The room tilted around me. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "She's my daughter," I whispered. "She's my blood," he countered. "And blood is thicker than your weak maternal instincts." Something snapped inside me, then the last thread of fear that had kept me tethered to his control for so long. "Listen to me carefully," I said, my voice deadly calm. "I carried her inside me. I gave birth to her alone because of you. I nearly died bringing her into this world. There is nothing thicker than that bond. I will find her if I have to tear this world apart with my bare hands." His smirk faltered. "You can make this easy or impossible," I continued. "But understand this, I will find her. And when I do, you will never see either of us again. Your only chance to have any connection to your daughter's life is to tell me where she is now." "You've changed," he observed, studying me with new eyes. "Motherhood does that," I replied. "Now, where is your mother taking my daughter?" He was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. "You know what? I believe you would tear the world apart. Maybe you deserve her after all." He leaned forward. "Check Betsy's Diner, off Route 30, in Valparaiso. My mother stops there every time she drives to her sister's lake house in Michigan. If you hurry, you might catch them." The call ended abruptly. I looked up at the detective, who was already on her phone, relaying the information. "It could be a trap," she warned me, "or a wild goose chase. Or it could be my daughter," I said, already reaching for my coat. "Let's go." If you're a mother listening to this, you know exactly what I felt in that moment. Leave a like if you'd move heaven and earth for your child. Subscribe to hear what happened next. The drive to Valparaiso was the longest 90 minutes of my life. 2 police cruisers led our unmarked car, lights flashing as we sped down the highway. In the back seat, I clutched a photo of Elaine Collier that the FBI had provided, a stern-faced woman, in her 60s with David's cold eyes. "What if she's already gone?" I asked the agent beside me. "What if this is just another one of his games?" "We've alerted state police on all routes to Michigan," she assured me. "And we have officers waiting at the sister's property. If they're on this path, we'll find them." Betsy's Diner appeared ahead, a faded roadside building with a half-empty parking lot. My eyes scanned each car, each person visible through the windows, searching for a woman with a baby. The officers entered first, spreading through the restaurant with practiced efficiency. I followed, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. And then I saw her dot in a back booth. A gray-haired woman was feeding a bottle to a tiny bundle in a pink blanket. My knees nearly buckled. Lily, the woman looked up as officers approached, her expression shifting from confusion to cold recognition when she saw me behind them. Elaine Collier, an officer asked. I'm just feeding my granddaughter, she said calmly. Nothing illegal about that. I pushed forward. That's my daughter. Her eyes narrowed. Daniel's wife. The one who betrayed him. The one who gave birth to that baby, I countered, moving closer. The one you helped him keep from her mother. Something like uncertainty flickered across her face. He said you abandoned them, that you ran off with another man and he was raising her alone. The lie was so absurd I almost laughed. I gave birth to her in a closet while your son watched football. He locked me in a bedroom and left me to die of an infection. Is that the son you raised? Color drained from her face. He wouldn't. May I interrupted, gesturing to Lily. After a long moment, she nodded. I reached down and lifted my daughter, cradling her against my chest for the first time in 8 days. She was smaller than I remembered, her face pinched with hunger despite the half-finished bottle. She won't take the formula properly, Elaine said, a note of frustration in her voice. Cries all night. She's breastfed, I said simply, feeling Lily root against my chest, seeking what she remembered. She knows what she needs. The officers led Elaine away for questioning, while a female deputy drove us to a private room at the local police station. There, for the first time since her birth, I nursed my daughter properly. Watching color return to her cheeks as she drank her fill, a doctor examined her, pronounced her healthy but slightly underweight, and recommended immediate nutritional support. A detective photographed the birthmark on her shoulder, proof of identity for the courts, though I needed no confirmation. I knew my child. What happens now? I asked the victim advocate who'd stayed by my side. Elaine is being charged with kidnapping, she explained. As for you and Lily, we have a safe house prepared until the immediate legal issues are sorted, and after that, you'll be free to go wherever you feel safe. Safe. The word felt foreign after so long living in fear. That night, in a secure location, with officers posted outside, I slept with Lily nestled against me, waking at her smallest sound, marveling at each perfect finger and toe by lamplight. We're going to be okay, I promised her. He can't hurt us anymore. But as dawn broke, I knew that wasn't entirely true. As long as David knew where we were, as long as the courts could order visitation or shared custody, we would never be truly free. The advocate found me packing the few baby items they'd provided at first light. What are you doing? She asked, concern in her voice. We can't stay here, I said simply. His mother knows where we are, which means he'll know soon enough. You're protected here, she insisted. There are officers for how long? I asked. A week? A month? What happens when the media attention fades? When I'm just another custody case? She had no answer. I need to protect my daughter, I said, and sometimes the system doesn't do that for women like me. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her purse and handed me an envelope. There's a network, she said carefully, for women who fall through the cracks. If you're certain this is what you want, call this number when you're somewhere safe. I took the envelope, tucked it into Lily's diaper bag, and walked out the back door while the officers changed shifts, disappearing into the early morning light with my daughter secure against my chest. Sometimes survival means breaking the rules that failed to protect you in the first place. The women's shelter in Memphis had no sign, no marking to indicate what happened behind its weathered brick walls, just a security camera and a buzzer system that required 3 separate codes to enter. We arrived with nothing but the clothes on our backs and Lily's diaper bag. The network had arranged everything: bus tickets purchased with cash, a volunteer who met us at the station, even formula supplements to help Lily regain the weight she'd lost. 3 months, the intake coordinator explained as she showed us to our room. That's how long you can stay while you get established. We'll help with job placement, housing, and legal documents. Legal documents. The words sent a chill through me. Lily still had no birth certificate, a ghost child, as I'd feared. Creating one now would leave a trail for David to follow. We have resources for special cases, the coordinator said, noting my expression. Women who need to disappear more thoroughly. I nodded, grateful for her discretion. Our room was small but private, a twin bed, a crib, a dresser, and a window that didn't open. Safe. for the first time in years. I slept without fear. Lily's crib pulled close enough that I could reach out and touch her in the night. Days fell into a gentle rhythm, mornings in the shelter's communal kitchen, preparing bottles while other mothers made lunches for older children. Afternoons in parenting classes or therapy sessions, Lily sleeping against my chest in a sling. Evenings in the small library, reading picture books aloud to her, promising her a future filled with stories and choices. "You're good with her," observed Maria, a shelter volunteer who ran the childcare program. "Ever worked with kids before?" I shook my head. "Never had the chance." She studied me thoughtfully. "We're always looking for help in the daycare. Pays minimum wage to start, but it's something." 2 weeks later, I was employed sitting on a colorful rug surrounded by toddlers, Lily napping in a bassinet nearby. The work was exhausting but healing. These children, many born into situations like Lily's, were thriving despite their difficult beginnings. It gave me hope. My therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Renee, helped me navigate the legal shadows of our situation. "He's been denied bail," she told me after making some calls. "The charges are serious kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, but trials take time, and he has family resources." "How long do we have?" I asked. 6 months, maybe a year before anything goes to court." She leaned forward. "By then, you need to be established somewhere new, with a support system and legal standing." With her help, I applied for a Social Security card under my maiden name, which I hadn't used since college. We worked through the process of getting Lily a delayed birth certificate, listing father as unknown despite the risks of perjury. "Better to ask forgiveness than permission in cases like this," Dr. Renee said firmly. 3 months stretched to 4. As winter settled over Memphis, I found a tiny apartment in a different part of the city's second floor. Deadbolts on every door and window, in a building with no-nonsense neighbors who noticed strangers. My job at the shelter's daycare became permanent, with a small raise that just covered our rent and utilities. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Lily thrived, growing from a fragile newborn into a curious, alert baby who tracked my movements with serious eyes. At 6 months, she sat up on her own. At 7 months, she babbled mama for the first time, sending me into tears of joy and terror at her development. Terror at how quickly time was passing. The prosecutor called monthly, pressing me to return for depositions, for evidence collection, for trial preparation. Each time, I made excuses. Each time, the pressure increased. "Without your testimony, he might walk," the victim advocate warned during one call. "Is that what you want?" What I wanted was irrelevant. What Lily needed was the only thing that mattered. On Lily's first birthday, a quiet celebration with 2 other shelter mothers who'd become friends, I received a letter forwarded through Dr. Renane. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. David had been released on bail pending trial. His mother had posted $1 million bond. That night, I packed our few belongings once again. By morning, Memphis was behind us, and we were on a bus heading west, toward a new city, a new name, a new beginning. The cycle of running had begun. Lily was for when we settled in Portland, our 3rd city in as many years. By then, we had a system, new town, new story, new names. In Seattle, we'd been Emily and Lily Blake, refugees from an abusive marriage in Chicago. In Albuquerque, we were Emma and Rose Wilson, a young widow and her daughter, starting fresh. In Portland, we became Ellen and Lily Taylor, transplants from the Midwest seeking a better climate for Lily's asthma, a condition she didn't have but which explained why we kept to ourselves. We lived in constant motion, never settling long enough to form attachments that might lead to difficult questions. The network of survivors helped each time, women who understood the stakes, who passed us along their underground railroad of safe houses and job connections. In Portland, I found work at a small art gallery, returning to the career I'd abandoned. When I married David, the owner, a silver-haired woman named Judith, recognized talent in my amateur sketches and encouraged me to create again. "You have a unique perspective," she said, studying a charcoal drawing I'd done of Lily sleeping. "There's both tenderness and vigilance here, like you're memorizing her in case she disappears." I turned away, unable to explain that was exactly what I was doing, cataloging every detail of my daughter in case we were separated again. Lily started kindergarten that fall. Her first real interaction with the world beyond our careful boundaries. I stood at the classroom door, physically ill with anxiety as she marched confidently to a table of other 5-year-olds. She'd be fine, the teacher assured me, misreading my fear as typical separation anxiety. All the parents feel this way. Not like this, I thought, not with the knowledge that a single slip or wrong name used, a story about her father, a school photo posted online could bring danger racing back into our lives. But Lily thrived in school. She made friends, learned to read with startling quickness, and developed a passion for science that left me scrambling to answer her endless questions about how the world worked. "Why don't I have a daddy?" she asked one night when she was 6. The question I'd been dreading for years. I had practiced this moment in therapy, rehearsed the age-appropriate truth that wouldn't burden her with too much darkness. "You had a father, but he wasn't a safe person," I explained carefully, "so we had to leave him behind to keep you safe." "Is he looking for us?" she asked, her perception unsettling me. "He might be," I admitted. "That's why we have to be careful about certain things." She nodded with a child's acceptance of the world as it is. "That's why we move a lot. And why I can't be in school pictures." For the first time, I wondered if our constant vigilance was creating its own kind of prison for her. When Lily turned 8, we celebrated with an actual party. 3 girls from her class, a homemade cake, and store-bought decorations that felt like extravagant luxuries after years of careful anonymity. Watching her blow out candles, surrounded by friends, I made a decision. We would stay in Portland. We would build a real life. The running had to stop for Lily's sake. I enrolled in therapy again, this time with a specialist in trauma recovery. I joined a support group for survivors of domestic violence. I made cautious friendships with other gallery employees and Lily's friends' parents. The years passed with a fragile normalcy. Lily grew from a solemn child into a thoughtful preteen with my artistic talent and a quiet confidence all her own. I advanced from gallery assistant to curator, building a modest career that supported our small but stable life. We still took precautions: no social media, no published school directories, regular check-ins with a lawyer who monitored David's whereabouts through court records. He had been convicted on lesser charges, but served only 18 months before being released. His mother had died, leaving him a substantial inheritance. He had resources, time, and motivation to find us if he chose. But as Lily's 10th birthday passed, then her 11th, then her 12th, hope began to germinate alongside our vigilance. Perhaps he had moved on. Perhaps we were finally free. Then came the letter. It arrived at the gallery, addressed to me by my real name the first time. I'd seen Emma Chen written in over a decade, no return address, postmarked from Chicago. I didn't open it. I took it straight to my lawyer, who read it behind closed doors while I paced his office. "He's dying," the lawyer said finally. "Pancreatic cancer, terminal. He wants to see Lily before he goes." Freedom and fear collided in my chest. Freedom that David's threat would soon end permanently. Fear that his final act might be to reclaim what he still considered his property. "What do I do?" I whispered. The lawyer handed me the letter. "That's not for me to say, but legally, you're in the clear. The restraining order is still active. He can't approach either of you." I took the letter home but didn't open it. Instead, I tucked it into a box with a few mementos of our journey: Lily's hospital bracelet from when she finally received medical care, a sketch of the women's shelter in Memphis, the first gallery program that listed my name as an exhibiting artist. One day, when she was older, Lily might want to know her full story. But for now, we had fought too hard for our peace to let him disrupt it, even in death. Lily found the letter when she was 14, during a rainy Saturday afternoon, when she was helping me clean out the closet in my art studio. The box fell, spilling its contents across the floor, fragments of our history, scattered like puzzle pieces. "What's this?" she asked, holding the unopened envelope, yellowed with age. I sat down heavily on the floor beside her, the moment I both dreaded and prepared for finally arriving. "That's a letter from your father," I said simply. "He sent it 3 years ago, when he was dying." Her fingers traced her name written on the envelope. Her real name, Lily Chen, which she hadn't used since infancy. "You never opened it," she observed. "No, I wanted to protect you from him, even from his words." She was quiet for a long moment, studying the other items from the box: the hospital bracelet, so tiny it could now barely fit around her thumb, newspaper clippings about a kidnapping case with our names carefully cut out, a sketch of a closet interior that only I understood the significance of. "I'd like to know," she said finally, "about him." About what really happened. I'm old enough now. I nodded, gathering the scattered items back into the box. Let's make some tea first. We sat at our kitchen table, the same scarred wooden one we'd bought secondhand when we first arrived in Portland, and I told her everything. The whirlwind romance and red flags I'd missed. The isolation and control, the birth in the closet, the infection that nearly killed me, her kidnapping and our escape through the underground network of survivors. She listened with a composure that broke my heart, occasionally asking questions but mostly absorbing the story of her beginnings with a maturity beyond her years. And, "You've been running from him all this time?" she asked when I finished. At first, yes, I admitted. But then I realized we were running toward a life where you could grow up safe and loved, where you could become yourself, without fear. She picked up the letter again. "And now, he's gone." "Yes. He died 3 years ago. His obituary was in the Chicago Tribune." "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you'd stayed?" she asked. "If you'd tried to make it work with him?" The question caught me off guard. "Every day for the first few years," I answered honestly. I wondered if I'd overreacted, if there might have been a way to fix him, to fix us. But some things can't be fixed, Lily. Some people don't want to change. She nodded, turning the envelope over in her hands. "Can I open it?" My instinct was still to protect her, to shield her from whatever poison might be contained in his final words. But she wasn't a baby anymore. She had the right to decide for herself. "If you want to," I said. "But whatever's in there doesn't change who you are or how loved you are." She slid her finger under the flap, breaking the seal that had remained intact for 3 years. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small photograph. The photo showed David holding a newborn Lily, his face younger than I remembered, touched with a genuine wonder I'd forgotten he was capable of feeling. The letter was brief. "Lily, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've spent years searching for you, first from anger, then from regret. Your mother was right to take you away. I was not a safe person. I would have destroyed the best parts of you, as my father did to me. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask only that you know that for one moment, when you were first placed in my arms, I loved you perfectly. Whatever happened after doesn't change that one pure moment." Your father. Lily read it twice, then handed it to me without comment. I read it with a storm of emotions: rage at his simplification of the terror he'd inflicted, confusion at his moment of self-awareness, grief for what might have been if he'd been capable of change. "What do you think?" I asked, handing it back to her. She folded the letter carefully, but set the photograph aside. "I think he was sick," she said simply. "Not just at the end, always." She reached across the table and took my hand. "And I think you saved both of us." We sat in silence for a while, the rain tapping gently against the windows of the home we'd made together. To survivors who had found our way back to normal against impossible odds. "Do you want to keep the photos?" I asked. Finally, she considered it, then shook her head. "No, I have all the family photos I need." She gestured to our refrigerator, covered with snapshots of our life together: Lily's first day of kindergarten, beach trips with friends, her middle school science fair where she'd won first place, the two of us laughing in the gallery at my first solo exhibition. "That's our real story," she said. "Not what happened in that closet." Later that night, as Lily slept, I sat in my studio looking at the photograph of David and infant Lily. He had been capable of love, in his broken way. But love without respect, without freedom, isn't really love at all. I put the photo back in the box, but I kept the letter on my desk, not as a connection to him, but as a reminder of how far we'd come from a woman giving birth alone in a dark closet to a mother and daughter building a life of light and possibility. Some might call our story a tragedy. I call it a triumph. Not because the journey was easy, but because we survived it together. If you're listening to this and seeing yourself in my words, know that there is a way out. There are people waiting to help you. There is a future where you and your children can breathe freely again. I'm living proof of that. Subscribe to our channel. If you believe in second chances, leave a comment with the words, "I survived," so I know you're out there too.